You are muted if you're trying to talk.
Yes. All right. Wonderful.
Great.
And then second, I saw in the facilitating guide that we were going to start at 6:05. So are we going to kind of admit people and then begin? Okay.
Yeah, usually we kind of give it a minute or two for folks to join. Then I'll hit. As Tom, you see that recording, feel free to get started.
Okay. Yeah, I'll follow your lead. So whenever you hit record, I'll start talking.
Great. That sounds good.
I'll welcome people too.
You want me to turn off people's ability to unmute so we don't have folks accidentally unmuting?
That would be great, Sasha.
Yes.
Great.
All right. All of you could mute. And then I will admit people.
All right. Hey, let's go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's public meeting. We are going to get started in just a few minutes as we are letting people in, and we'll get started in probably 2 or 3 minutes. While we're waiting, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat and mention any particular places in Revere that you like to walk, bike, or roll. Again, welcome everyone. We'll get started in just about a minute or two. While we wait, if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat and mention any places that you like to walk, bike, or roll in Revere. Oh, the beach boardwalk, that's great. Good day to be on the beach today. Northern Strand Community Path, Shirley Ave. Great. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We're going to wait about 1 more minute and then we'll get started. For those of you who just joined us, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat and mention a place that you like to walk, bike, and roll in Revere. Great, more Northern Strand Trail users, Revere Beach, that's definitely a popular one. Mountain Ave, great. Beachmont neighborhood, Belle Isle Marsh Trails, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you all. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we will get started. I'm going to hit record. One second. Sasha, could you help me record?
Recording in progress.
I just did record to the cloud, Mara. I hope that worked.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining tonight. Tom, I'll hand it to you to get us started, and I will share my screen. If you can just give me 1 second.
Of course. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Was I waiting on you? I'll jump right into it. So thanks for joining us today to talk about our plans to create an environment where we can safely walk, bike, and roll throughout the city of Revere. I'm Tom Skorowski. I'm the Chief of Planning and Community Development for the city of Revere. And before we get started, I did want to note that this presentation is available to anyone that needs interpretation in Arabic and Spanish. And I will just pause for a moment to let Lorena and Asma introduce themselves.
Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche sobre el plan de caminar, andar en bicicleta y rodar en Revere para poder aprender más sobre el proyecto y mejorar las condiciones de cómo nos movemos aquí. Hoy esta noche voy a ayudar con interpretación en español si alguien lo necesita. Asma.
Asma, are you available to introduce yourself?
Yes. مساء الخير، اسمي أسماء أبو فودة، أنا مترجمة اللغة العربية. أهلا بكم اليوم في مناقشة خطة ريفير للدراجات والمشي. للترجمة باللغة العربية الرجاء اختيار اللغة العربية أسفل الشاشة. شكرا لكم.
Great. Thank you so much, Lorena and Asma. And thank you all for coming out today. I know it's a hot one out there. I hope you're able to stay out of the heat. I hope you're staying hydrated. We just had a wonderful Juneteenth flag raising event here at the city of Revere, right in front of City Hall. And it was a wonderful event, but it was a hot one. And on a hot day like today, one of my favorite things to do, and I'm sure it's the case for many here tonight, is to go to Revere Beach and cool off a little bit. At the same time, on a hot day like today, one of my least favorite things to do is to get into my car and drive to Revere Beach. You know the feeling when you walk inside your car, it's 120 degrees out. It takes 10 minutes for the AC to kick in. There's something about tailpipe emissions in the heat like this that it just hits differently. You're driving to Revere Beach, you're dealing with the throngs of traffic, and you're sweating bullets as you're trying to find a place to park. For so many, myself included, in a place such as Revere, where we have such a wonderful asset at Revere Beach and so many other wonderful assets, amenities, and jobs throughout the city, it's either not practical, possible, or safe to walk, bike, or roll from your home to many of these places. And that's really ultimately why we're here tonight, to develop a plan to change that. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and taking time. I want to thank especially our members of our working group, who we'll talk about a little bit more later this evening, who are going to be a committed group of folks who are going to be working on this plan from start to finish. I want to thank our elected officials who are here tonight. I am seeing Councillor Haas is here, who's also a member of our working group. And I know Councillor Jaramillo will be joining us as well if he's not already here. It's hard to see everybody who's attending, but he'll be joining us shortly. I think he was just leaving that event as well. So thank you to the working group, and thank you to the city staff who are here to support this work. And then finally to the team at MAPC, who will introduce themselves in just a moment and will be emceeing this event this evening and helping to usher the planning process forward. So tonight we are going to introduce sort of a framework for this planning process. We're going to take some time to get to know one another and to get to know your thoughts, feelings, expectations, hopes, dreams about the future for the city. And then we're going to close with some next steps on how to stay engaged in the project moving forward. So at that, I'll hand it over to Mara to talk through the next steps.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Just so everyone knows, we are recording the meeting tonight so that the recording will be publicly available for everyone afterwards. It'll also be recorded in Spanish and Arabic for those who may want to listen in those languages. The final recording will be posted on our website. If you do not wish to be recorded, you can turn off your camera or leave the meeting. All comments that are shared verbally and in the chat will be recorded. As Tom mentioned, our agenda tonight, first, we're going to introduce you to the project team, the folks who are working on this plan. We're going to have a quick audience poll to understand who's in the room tonight and who we need to continue to engage. We're going to give an overview of the project, timeline, what you can expect. We're going to talk about Revere today and some of the existing conditions on the ground. Then we're going to go into some 30-minute breakout discussions to begin to hear from residents of Revere about walking and biking and rolling now in the city and preferences for changes. Then we're going to talk about opportunities to engage in the future of this plan for the next roughly a year. And then we're going to wrap up before or right at 7:30 tonight. So first, to introduce you to the project team, my name is Mara Holland. I'm a senior transportation planner at MAPC and the project manager for the Revere Walk, Bike, and Roll plan. Also tonight with me, I have Sasha Perotti and Julia Wallers, who are helping on this plan, and Naji Nunali also is part of our project team internally. Also with the city of Revere, Tom introduced himself already. We also have Julie DeMuro and Lorena Escolero, who are joining us from the city of Revere. So you might be asking, what is MAPC? We are the regional planning agency who serve 101 cities and towns in and around the greater Boston region. We help a lot of our cities and towns do planning initiatives such as transportation, land use, housing, economic development, and more. We really help municipalities who either want more of a regional perspective or want some capacity to help build and develop new plans. Right now, we are working with the city of Revere to put together this walk, bike, and roll plan for all of you to improve conditions in the city. And before we get started, we're going to have a quick audience poll to help us understand who's joining us here today and to help us understand who we need to continue to engage. So a poll should have just popped up on your screen. We have a couple quick questions to help us understand more about who's joining us tonight. All right, it looks like we have 5 responses, 7 responses. Oh, I think somebody may have ended the poll. Here we go.
Relaunched it, Mara.
Great, thanks.
For anybody who's a co-host on the meeting tonight, just don't click end poll because it will end it.
Great. So anyone who sees that poll pop up on your screen, please do fill that out for us so we just can get a sense of who's joining us tonight. And if you already filled it out, I think you might need to just fill it out again. Great. We have 13 responses, 14. Great. We'll just wait one more minute. We have a couple more folks who still need to respond. All right, we'll give it another 15 seconds or so, and then we'll end the poll and look at the results.
Somebody asked a question about why the age range is limited to 29. It might just be how you're looking at the poll. I hope, because I am seeing people are answering. There's a 30 through 49, 50 through 64, and 65 and older as well. So you might just need to scroll down on the poll.
Yeah, there should be 4 questions that you see. So I think if you scroll, you should be able to see all of them. Great. So I think we can wrap this up. Thank you all for participating in our poll. I'm going to share the results. It looks like about 85% of folks are joining us tonight are Revere residents, and other folks come to Revere for various purposes, which is great. The vast majority of folks are in the 30 to 49 age range, but a good range otherwise. We have a number of folks who have children here, a number of folks who live with, who either are or live with seniors, folks whose primary language is other than English, folks who are themselves or live with a person with a disability. So good mix of folks coming to this space. We also asked, how do you typically get around Revere now? About 71% of you clicked that you walk, 42% bike, 17% roll. We have a lot of folks who drive, very understandably. A number of folks who use the blue line as well, about half of you, which is great. And about a third of the folks who are here tonight also use the bus, which is great. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you all so much for participating in that poll so we can kind of get a good sense of who's joining us tonight. Now I am going to hand it back to Tom to kick us off with the plan.
Great. Thanks, Mara. So why are we doing this work? Chiefly, we're doing this work to increase mobility options for everyone, especially those that can't drive. We're looking to increase safety on our streets, decrease crashes, and of course, decrease emissions related to transportation. And finally, kind of connected to my comments at the outset, we want to improve access to key destinations such as Revere Beach and transit stops. As there's so many that live in the city that might be a stone's throw from Revere Beach or the Blue Line. But practically speaking, it's difficult to access those types of amenities. And we want to make sure we're removing those barriers and doing what we can to create a safer environment. Next slide, please. And the impetus for this plan was really our Revere Master Plan, Next Stop Revere, which came out in 2020. And one of its key goals was to develop a pedestrian and bicycle master plan to document local infrastructure, determine gaps in the network, and prioritize future infrastructure investment decisions. And, it came from the plan, but this certainly was a long time coming, and I'm sure a lot of folks on the call appreciate that, because in the plan, there were 3 top concerns noted, and one of them was pedestrian safety, and one of them was traffic. And of course, they're interrelated, right? And they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And we're certainly doing what we can to alleviate traffic issues in the city, but we're also trying to be realistic about what we can accomplish. And we want to provide alternatives to just driving. As I saw, there's 79% of us who drive in the city. And hopefully we will be working through this plan to give options. And again, not really just for those people that can't have a car, but those people that absolutely need one. And, we recognize that for some, a car is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And we want to make sure we're removing as many cars from the road as possible by creating safer alternatives for folks. And, I'm sure amongst the 79% of you that said you drive quite often, I'm sure there's a fair amount who would like not to. And we want to, work to build upon our planning efforts that have been done in the past, our Complete Streets Plan, our work underway to build a Revere Beach connector to connect the Northern Strand to the beach, and really create a network that's safe for everybody to walk, bike, and roll in the city. Next slide, please. To break down the three main components of the plan, one of them, of course, is just to have a final written plan that is ultimately our roadmap that creates a set of strategies and guidelines on how to accomplish the work ahead. Along with that plan, we'll be working with an engineering firm to create designs and cost estimates for some of the projects that the community finds most critical to meeting our walk, bike, and rolling needs in the city. And then finally, the third component, as I mentioned before, is that working group that is really going to put the time in for the next year, working with us on a consistent basis to help put this plan together. And that last piece is so critical, and really beyond the working group, working with everyone here on the call tonight. This is both a plan and it's also an effort to make sure we're building a consensus and we're building a voice in the city of Revere that prioritizes walking, biking, and rolling. Because as I saw, somebody had mentioned in their registration, how do we reverse 70 plus years of developing the city for the car? And I think one of the ways we reverse that is by having a concerted group of committed residents, businesses, and stakeholders who are working to change that. So the working group is an important part of building the plan, but it's also an end in and of itself, because we all need to come together on this plan to work towards a safer Revere. Next slide, please. And in terms of project timeline, we're right here at that summer 2024 bullet point, our first public meeting. Between now and next summer, we'll hold 3 different public meetings. And between now and the end of the plan, we'll hold an in-person workshop where our design and engineering consultants will begin their work piecing together some of the conceptual designs for what we'd like to see. And we'll be drafting that plan. And then in spring of next year, we'll bring a draft together for the community to review. And then based off of the feedback and the input that we hear, both on the plan and the designs developed by our engineering team, we'll develop that final report, which will be released in the summer of 2025. So we got about a year ahead and a lot of opportunities to stay engaged and make sure you're giving us your input and ideas on this plan. So I'll hand it back to Mara now.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm going to take everyone through some existing conditions work of what Revere looks like today and some of the things that we're looking at to evaluate some of the data as we begin this plan. So some quick facts about Revere: about 20% of the total population is under 18. 44% is foreign born, and about 58% of folks speak a language other than English at home. So that's really critical when we're thinking about our outreach and engagement efforts to understand who those folks are that live in Revere and how to engage with them. Just over half of the population is non-white. And so these are all really important things for us to consider when developing our community engagement plan and our strategy for how we're doing outreach throughout this plan, as well as who may be impacted now by existing conditions and how we can make those improvements. We also gathered some data from the census about how Revere moves today. The total number of households as of 2022 was about 21,000. And of those households, just under 20% did not have a vehicle. So that's about 20% of folks that do not have regular access to drive. And some recent studies, not everywhere actually tracks the people that are able to drive in a community, but of those communities that have done that, it's roughly about 30% of a number of communities that cannot drive. And that's for a variety of reasons, whether it's age related, whether you're too young to get a license, or you've reached an age where you cannot or choose not to drive anymore. Also for folks who are recent immigrants and are not able to get a license, folks with a disability, there's a variety of reasons why people cannot or don't drive. And this does not even consider folks that choose not to drive. So this portion of the population is pretty significant. from the census data, we know that about 2/3 of the population of Revere regularly drive to work, but about 1/3 of the population utilize other means to get to work, including public transit, biking, walking, etc. Some existing conditions on infrastructure in Revere. The total city is about 5.7 square miles, so fairly small. The Northern Strand Trail runs through the northwest corner, which is a really phenomenal, not only a really phenomenal space, but a really great connector to local communities, and hopefully soon to the beach. Broadway and Revere Street have a painted bike lane on that route, but not necessarily a designated protected bike lane at the moment. Bennington Street and Beachmont Connector have proposed bike lanes on those spaces. So that's your current conditions in Revere as far as biking infrastructure. And then you can see on the map, all of those like yellowish brown lines are also your current sidewalk network. So pretty significant number of sidewalks in Revere, although this does not account for condition of sidewalks. This map is really just showing where there are existing sidewalks. Also, as many of you probably know, some of these major roads in Revere are owned by the state. That includes MassDOT, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and these roads are not directly controlled by the city. They're controlled by the state, which makes it more challenging to make changes on those roadways. These streets also really divide the city quite a bit and prevent people from getting to some key destinations like Revere Beach and the Northern Strand Trail and other key destinations within the city. So now I'll talk briefly about some safety data in the city. So there's been a high number of vehicle crashes in the last 4 years. This is not unique to Revere. We're seeing this throughout our region, that vehicle crashes, especially since the pandemic, have really continued to grow and escalate. And it's a problem that we're trying to think about more large scale. So about 2,500 crashes have occurred within Revere in the last 4 years. The greatest concentration of crashes that we're seeing is on Broadway, which is a key commercial corridor through the center of Revere. Many of these crashes, as you can see, occurred on these state-managed roadways and or near the schools in Revere. And about 4% of those total crashes involved pedestrians or cyclists. Again, a pretty good concentration of those crashes that involved pedestrians and cyclists were also on Broadway. And many of these did occur on state-owned roadways or near schools as well, as we know a lot of kids walk and bike to school as well. So definitely something that we are going to be looking at, especially when we're thinking about recommendations for changes in these specific areas. We've also looked at the 311 requests in the city of Revere over the last 5 or so years. And from that data, the most common requests were for sidewalk repairs, street crossings, pothole repairs, and other street and road changes that needed to be made. The second most common request was for illegally parked vehicles, another big problem that folks have been reporting to the Your City's 311 system. And the most requests were in Ward 1. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that the most challenges were there, but more so that the most amount of people are reporting challenges in that area. And here's just a sample of some of the comments that we pulled out from the 311 data in the last couple of years. Folks have made a wide variety of comments about challenges and also potential solutions through the 311 system. If you haven't used it yet, it's a really great opportunity to directly report things to the city and have that documented. Folks have reported things related to weather and flooding and how that impacts people's ability to walk around the city. Suggestions for street changes, such as making Essex a one-way street, which might improve safety. Adding blue bike stations, especially near the beach. Street lights that are out, which cause challenges for people being able to walk and bike, because then it becomes very dark in certain areas. As well as parked cars, making it challenging for children to walk or wait for the school bus. So these are just a sample of some of the things that we're definitely going to be looking at as we're making our way through this plan. And as we're moving forward with this, one of our goals is to really develop a responsive plan. And what that means is that we want to make sure we are incorporating as much both existing conditions data as well as your feedback and your concerns that you're seeing on a regular basis in Revere, things that, your ideas. We want to make sure that we are incorporating all of that and turning that into recommendations. And so, as Tom mentioned, there's going to be numerous opportunities to engage with this plan. And we would love for all of you to continue to stay engaged and give us your feedback as we're making our way through this process. And speaking of process, this is our planned process as we move forward. So right now we're in the stage where we're evaluating existing conditions. We just gave you a sample of some of that data. We're also starting community input tonight with our first public meeting. At the end of this meeting, we're also going to be launching our public survey, which I would love for not only all of you to take, but also to share with your friends and neighbors and community organizations that you're a part of in Revere, to make sure that we're really receiving a lot of feedback from a wide variety of residents within the city. As Tom mentioned earlier, we're going to hold an in-person workshop in the fall that we would love for all of you to attend and continue to give us your feedback. And then likely another public meeting next spring to showcase the semifinal draft plan and get any final thoughts on that plan before we finalize it next summer. We're also going to be hiring a design and engineering consultant later this summer to help really focus on maybe 3 to 4 design areas to help the city move forward with being able to make progress on a couple projects. And then next summer, we're going to have our final recommendations. And these can include not just infrastructure changes, so like where we want new bike lanes or sidewalks, but also policy recommendations, programmatic recommendations. Some of you may be familiar with the Safe Routes to School program, which is a really phenomenal program to enhance walking, biking, and rolling to school for kids. So that is the end of the body of our presentation, and we're happy now to take any audience questions that you may have. I'm going to jump over to Julie and ask if we had any questions in the chat. And once we get through questions in the chat, happy to have anybody raise their hand and we can call on you.
So no questions in the chat at this time. We are having a little trouble with the Arabic interpretation services, and we are working on it. And hopefully it'll be up and working shortly.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Does anyone have any questions for us? Feel free to raise your virtual hand and we can call on you.
And we actually do have one question in the chat. A question about expanding bike share programs extensively, and also incorporating dedicated bike lanes in the city, and what the plans will be. How do we integrate this into our existing infrastructure?
Julie, before we get to that question, and it's a great one, I am seeing that Asma cannot unmute herself. She's blocked. I know I was experiencing that before. Asma, if you might want to try to log out and log back in again. That's what I did to fix the problem. And that will help solve hopefully the interpretation challenges with Arabic interpretation. We'll give you a minute to log back in. So extensive bike sharing programs and dedicated bike lanes. This is a really great question and a really timely one. I'll hit the bike sharing first. So currently we have 4 different blue bike stations in the city, 2 in the Shirley Avenue neighborhood, 1 next to the Revere Beach T-stop, and 1 at 69 Shirley Avenue in what will soon be a city pocket park. And then we have 1 at the library and 1 at Revere City Hall. So, we've had this for about 2 years now, and I think we recognize that it isn't enough to create that network effect that we need for a bike share system to be effective. So you're hearing it here first, but we're about to expand our blue bike stations with 2 additional stations actually at Revere Beach on DCR property. It's not quite live yet, but it's in the works and should be there this summer. We're also looking to get 2 stations at the Northern Strand and a few other locations that we're considering throughout the city. And actually on that note, if you have any recommendations for places you'd love to see a blue bike station, please put it in the chat. It would be helpful to know, because I think we really need to expand our network. And then the second question in terms of integrating dedicated bike lanes into our work, there's going to be a few projects coming down the pipeline that are really exciting kind of first steps in that process. The most important one is known as the Beachmont Connector. And that is going to be a project where we're partnering with MassDOT to essentially build a series of on-street and off-street bike lanes from Beachmont Square, Donnelly Square, I guess, depending on who you ask, to Elliott Circle. And there's actually going to be this fall what's known as a design public hearing, where we meet with the community and MassDOT to talk about the project and the initial designs. And then, of course, we have the Northern Strand Trail, which has been up and running for quite some time. And then on Ocean Ave, we have just a stretch or 2 where we do have some dedicated bike lanes. But we certainly have a lot of work to do to create that network. And that's going to be a big part of what we are here for with this plan. Julie?
We do
Yeah.
So just quickly, Tom, Norma Harmillo had her hand raised and then she put it down. So I don't know if she has a question that she would like to ask the group. Norma, is there a question you would like to ask?
Okay, yes. It was more a comment than a question. So I was very happy to hear that there's a plan to have like sidewalks where I live. It is a very dangerous street where I live, and I think there is a need to have a sidewalk just to make walking a safe and comfortable and convenient option for short trips and for all the people who walks through my street over to the T station. So another thing is to see if you guys are going to have in consideration the speed humps near the schools to slow down the vehicles, because they really don't take in consideration one of the streets would be Everett Street, right in front of the Beachmont School. So that was another suggestion that I wanted to put out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. That's a great suggestion. As a father of 3 young children, I can certainly empathize with, the concerns of parents in some of our schools walking and biking, rolling safely when there's high traffic. And this plan is certainly going to be laying the groundwork for different projects where we're building safe routes to schools. And actually, at the Beachmont School, right around Everard Street, which you had just referenced, we are in the process of working on implementing a safe routes to school project that will do some of exactly what you mentioned. Julie, would you want to talk about that for just a minute?
Yep. So the Safe Routes to School project for Beachmont has been in the works since 2018. That's when we first put the application in, and the project just got picked up back in 2021. There are some right-of-way issues that the engineers are trying to work on, but we are looking to improve pedestrian and cyclist crossings and accommodation sidewalk, bike lane in the area of Everard Street up to Cummings, that little Cummings Park, that little triangle park there, Crescent Ave, and in and around that area. It'll also include Belle Isle Ave and Cottage Street as well. There will be a meeting that will be happening pretty soon to talk about the proposed plans. And then if these should be amendable, agreeable to the City of Revere, it would actually go before the City of Revere Traffic Commission. So we can actually notify this group of when it's going to be coming to the Traffic Commission meeting. And we encourage people to help us advocate for these changes, because this is where we need you. If Tom and I and Lorena can go up there and talk about how we need these changes, but it would be great to have this group come in and talk to the commission and tell them why these changes are needed.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And I saw a few different questions kind of getting at the same thing, and it's probably because it's a very hot day today. But, what plans we have on canopy design to provide shade in focused areas. I saw another comment about green space, and, there's a lot of concrete in the city, and we need to break it up. So when you're walking and biking around, it doesn't feel so hot, especially on a day like today. And that's certainly something that, both I think we'd incorporate in a plan like this, but also in some of our broader planning efforts. Always something we're keeping in mind and doing what we can to break up the concrete that, creates heat islands, as we call it in our field, which really make it hotter to move around the city. I also saw questions about, or recommendations about, blue bike stations. Somebody had mentioned at the various schools. Great recommendation. Somebody mentioned Suffolk Downs, and I actually forgot about that one. This summer, there's going to be stations going in at Suffolk Downs beside the new development, Amaya. And then somebody also mentioned blue bike stations at our parks, which is a wonderful suggestion and one we're going to have to consider. Certainly we have our one at City Hall is right next to the beautiful green space we have here. But, in terms of our more active parks, it would be great to have some opportunities like that. And I'm having trouble going through all of them here. I see blue bike.
Tom,
yes.
We do have a question in the chat about what the bike lanes will actually look like. Will it be a painted section, kind of like Broadway, or will they actually be protected bike lanes with some sort of a buffer between the traffic lane and parking lanes? What will we prefer? And I think that's really more of a decision of what can actually fit on the roadway and what the Traffic Commission will allow.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to. Is it might be dependent on the area we're looking at. So Broadway is a great example. And I know that's Megan was referring to Broadway, and we have, a bike lane sort of that's connected to our bus lane that's headed southbound on Broadway. On, the northbound side, we have what's called sharrows, which is basically paint that indicates that bikes can also travel along this corridor. It's a nice signal, but it's not a bike lane, and it's not a safe, protected bike lane. Part of the challenge we have along Broadway is we don't have a lot of space to work with, and we have a lot of parking needs for businesses throughout the corridor. But there are other places, where we are examining where it'd be appropriate to have some protected bike lanes that shield bicyclists from traffic, and also what we call shared use lanes, which are, lanes not just for bikes, but for folks walking and rolling as well. The Northern Strand's a great example, but, there are plenty of other places throughout the city where we'll be looking to implement something like that.
Tom, there's a question in the chat about integrating this work with transit infrastructure. What is being considered walk, bike, last mile components of larger trips? And we do have some exciting news on that forefront if you want to share with the group.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking to integrate transit with last mile, to be sure, to integrate our transit opportunities. We actually have a micro transit service that, this isn't walk, bike, or roll, but a micro transit service that will provide some last mile connections to folks in Revere that we're going to be unveiling with the city of Chelsea in the near future. Recognizing that right now, to get from West Revere to the T, we don't have the infrastructure in place to allow that to happen yet. But that's a big planning focus of honestly what this plan is all about, is creating the framework for how do we get from one side to the other in the city safely, walking, biking, and rolling. And, it's not just intended to be a plan, but what this plan can allow us to do is then take this to our state, take this to our federal and other funders to say, hey, here's what the community wants to see. And ultimately with stuff like that, I saw somebody mention a pedestrian bridge to Wonderland from the Wonderland High School to the T stop, and kind of building a connection between that area where, you have North Shore Drive, you've got Route 60, and you've got these high traffic state-owned corridors. They are not within our control, but we're doing what we can to advocate and to push at the state level and to try to get the funding that's needed to help create those safe connections that don't exist today. So that's certainly a core focus of what we're doing tonight.
We have a couple more questions in the chat. I think one thing I will ask everyone here, if you have posted a question in the chat, please be patient. Please don't post it again. We're going question by question. So I want to make sure that the one question here twice, but that has already been answered. We want to talk a little bit about economic development and how this plan will accommodate, spaces that will create an area of having some people having an opportunity to do some placemaking, maybe a little bit of pop-up markets, and then also how will this plan work to coexist with commercial construction and delivery vehicles, and how do we all coexist on the roadway together?
Yeah, Alessandra, that's a great question. And, certainly, partnering with DCR, for example, on outdoor activities at the beach is one great way we're trying to work on placemaking. And, we'll be moving the farmers market to Revere Beach this summer. I'm sure you've seen on the beach, have partnered with them to have some pop-up food truck opportunities. So folks, when they're visiting the beach in the summer, they don't have to go far to find a place to eat, and, find amenities to purchase, things like that. And we're also working with a partnership called the Shirley Avenue TDI Partnership, which is, a group of businesses, residents, stakeholders that are committed to making that a great place to live, work, and play. Just a few examples of some things we're doing. We can't just build walkable infrastructure, but we have to build things that people want to walk to. And the question that was posed about loading zones and, what we can do to make both pedestrian friendly environments, but also help promote commerce. And that does kind of get to what I was mentioning before in terms of we need to build protected bike lanes in the right places, and understanding the constraints that might exist to commerce in the others. So I think it's always kind of a fine line we're walking here, and we take it on a case by case basis, depending on the corridor, depending on the project. That's
and
great.
I know that we want to entertain one more question, and there's a lot of great questions here. So I think the questions that were not answered, we will do our best to email the participants. But there is one question regarding how do we incorporate some type of walking and biking program into Revere Public Schools. So in my earlier work, I was the actual walk to school coordinator for the city. This is how I rolled into this role that I am in now. So the school committee is very much aware, and the superintendent is very much aware of what this program can be. And for many years, we did have many of the schools having walk to school buses a couple of days during the week. And the key to that is to really have some champions within the school that would be teachers, PTA parents, aunts, uncles, whatever, who really believe in this and want to volunteer their time, meeting up with the families at the walk stops or the bike stops, and then kind of leading the kids to school. It's very important to note that most parents are very apprehensive about letting their kids walk and bike to school by themselves. And I also think it's just a mother of four. There were days that we couldn't get out of the house fast enough, no matter how early we got up. But, the morning, it could be smooth sailing or it can just be a dumpster fire. So I think, there's different ways to approach this, but, some families, it's just too difficult to get everybody out the door to walk. It's just to get everybody there on time. It's driving. But we can talk about how this could be factored into the plan and maybe resurrect some of the walk to school programs, bike to school programs that the city used to have.
Great. And I think that covers most of the questions. I think somebody mentioned strategically located washrooms. I think that's something we can include in our recommendations, looking where the right spots might be. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for breakouts. And Rachel, hopefully you got my question I answered in the chat about the Beachmont connector. And again, more to come in the fall with that meeting. But I'll hand it over to Mara to talk through next steps here. And thank you all for those great questions.
Great. Thank you all. And just so you know, any questions that have been listed in the chat will be recorded. And also at the end of this meeting tonight, we are going to have a public survey as well, where you can provide some feedback, and any questions not answered, our team can follow up about those. So now I'm going to move us into breakout rooms. We have three main questions that we'd like your feedback on. The first one is, what challenges do you experience getting around Revere via walking, biking, and rolling? Our second question is, what are the most important changes to make it better to walk, bike, and roll around the city? And our third question is, how would your daily life be impacted if it were better to walk, bike, and roll in Revere? And we'd love your thoughts on those questions. We'll have about 20 minutes in the breakouts, and then I will send you a notice of 5 minutes left. We'll come back, do a quick report out, and then talk about next steps, as well as share that link to the public survey that we are making live with all of you tonight. And so we will get started with our breakouts. And for anyone who needs Arabic interpretation, you can stay in the main room. Lorena will be leading a Spanish-specific breakout, and then we'll have our other facilitators as well. For those of you still here, if you're looking for a breakout room, there should be a little pop-up at the bottom that directs you into a breakout room. If not, you can click on, there should be a little icon at the bottom that says breakout rooms, or you can hit those three dots that say more, and can put yourself into a breakout room, and you can have time to ask questions. And I'm also happy to have folks stay here, and we can have our own breakout room if that's easier for folks. Okay, folks that are here, I am going to pause.
Recording stopped.
Folks that are here, if you aren't able to join a breakout room, I'm happy to ask you the questions that we have here and get any feedback that you have. Our first question, and I'm happy to have you all